and welcome to Grow Your Destiny, where you learn about motivation, mindset, and manifestation. Today, we have a great show for you. Alex Orellana, who is a 10-time published author. Today, he's going to teach us how to go from the beginning of just the thought process of a book all the way through publishing a book. Thank you, Alex, for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Angelique.
You're welcome. So we have a bunch of good questions, and we're going to get a lot of good information from you today for all of our viewers so that they can learn how to publish their books as well, because I know a lot of people have been wanting to do this. So what made you want to become an author?
You know, I never wanted to be an author. I don't like writing. I think it's very labor intensive, and I think it's a lot of work. But on the flip side, the reason why I started writing is because I came to Los Angeles to be a director and a producer of movies. And I met all these different directors and movie studio presidents and all these people that had the ability to hire me as a director. And I said, what could I do to become a better director? And they told me, write all your own material. That way you own all the intellectual property, and that way you have all the power, because when it comes time to direct, you can say, hey, I know this story better than anybody else. Hire me to direct the movie too. And then that's the best way to kind of get your foot in the door. And it also, what I love about writing is, especially in this type of pandemic climate, is that I don't have to ask anyone for permission to write a book. You know, I can literally just get up, crank out 6 pages a day or 30 pages a day, but I don't have to worry about anyone validating me in any way to be creative. Whereas being a director, being a producer, you need money, you need resources, you need a team. I don't need any of that when I write a book, because it's just coming from me. I have to compete with myself when I write, and it's just an act of discipline. And what I love about writing, like I told you, I'm not really much of a writer but what I do love about it is that it causes you to be very disciplined in just getting the work done. So that's the answer to your question. Sorry, it's a very long answer.
No worries. That's a great mindset to have. Really, it is, to just really just power through and get it done. So what inspired your stories? You've had 10 published books. What inspired all of those?
Well, definitely, when you're writing a book, people say, write what you know. And for me, I spent 20 years trying to write my life story. And I was always worried about what people would think, my family members specifically. So this book right here, it's called Borderline. This book took me 20 years to write. And it was the book I never thought I would write. I was going to go to my grave before this thing got published. But then what happened was I literally had a big decision to make. Big surgery was coming along the way. I was going to have heart surgery. And I said to myself, you know what? This is the time to write the book. Because if I don't, my kids, anyone else will never know what truly happened. And it's the story of my sister and brother. When I was 10 years old, my parents adopted 10 kids from Mexico. And throughout our journey, I guess, it's hard to summarize this book, but basically what happened was some of my family members got into a life of crime, into the gangs. And so both of these siblings got into trouble, but one kept getting into trouble and one got out. And she then got into the military. She became a nurse. And then at the very end of the day, they both are in prison. He lives there and she works there. So that's kind of a weird thing. And the borderline is actually the bars, because they both every day are in jail, but one chose to be there and one is there because of the consequences of their actions. So that's what this book's about.
All right. So what is your favorite book that you've written? You've written 10 of them and published 10. What's your favorite one?
Well, the series that you just mentioned, that I just mentioned right here, is Borderline book. I would say it was the hardest to write because I thought my parents were going to disown me after they read it. But it was probably the most well-received book that I ever wrote, because people who knew me didn't know me. Like, they read this and they're like, oh my God, this is what was going on the whole time when you were like, supposedly everything looked great on the outside. But another fun book that I really enjoyed to write is the sequel, and this is called Fear is Contagious. And this is the same characters, but this one where it's more rooted in truth. This is kind of like taking it to the next level of what would happen if the characters in the first book were thrown into a pandemic. And a lot of the stuff that I wrote here, this book took me 7 days to write. A lot of the things in this book came true. So that's kind of crazy that, I have some kind of predictive writing style here. So.
Well, you could have been manifesting as you're writing it down.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Who knows?
You definitely have the motivation and the mindset for it. So you said 7 days. Is that typical to write a book in 7 days? How long does it really take to write a book?
It does not take 7 days to write a book, but the reason why this one took only 7 days is because I knew all the characters and I had an idea of the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I was living it. I was in the middle of this pandemic, so the news was coming out. So I took a lot of news stories that were really happening, and I inserted them in, changed the character names, changed a couple of the circumstances, but a lot of it was rooted in what's going on right now. So yeah, that's how long it takes to write. As far as, I'm sorry, to answer your question more in depth, a book could take 20 years. It could take 20 days. It really comes down to how organized you are and how disciplined you are. Because if you don't write a book every day, it can take forever. So, I mean, it's really about how organized, you are. That's what I'd say.
So it takes dedication to the book. You have to be dedicated to it, is what you'd say. That makes sense. That makes sense. That's with everything in life, right? Definitely. Exactly. And to stay dedicated to your craft. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you publish your books?
So I self-publish on Amazon, and the reason why I chose to do that is because I have all the freedom when I self-publish. I mean, definitely I could probably make more money if I got a literary agent and had it put in bookstores and on college campuses and all that. But for now, during this time of lockdown, I'm literally just writing, and I don't take a break. So, I've been really working on getting all these books made so that once the pandemic is over, then these are all going to become movies. So I write them in screenplay format. So that doesn't take up the whole page. A lot of people aren't used to reading a book like that. But what I found out is that when I said, hey, you want to read my screenplay? No one wants to read it. But then when I say, hey, you want to read my published book that you can buy, then it's so funny. I get a lot more feedback, positive feedback of people who want to read it. So.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that. You feel like it just gives you that added piece of expertise.
Yeah, credibility for sure. And plus, I can monetize it that way. So if it's just a screenplay, it usually just sit on my desk and, no one will read it. But if I monetize it, it gives me more resources to make more books.
Gives you that clout. The clout is the 10-time published author.
Right, exactly.
That's awesome. So tell me about some of your books.
Okay, well, like I told you already about Borderline, that's the crown jewel. Then I got the sequel once again where that family is living in a pandemic. In this particular book, the girl that was in the first one right here, she is a nurse. And so she has to deal with the coronavirus. And then the guy that's in the book here, he's in jail and he has to break out of jail and be reunited with the father of the story, and they don't get along. So trying to figure out how all that goes on. And then the third character is me, my character who has heart surgery and has to deal with the pandemic. So it's just like, it's my action movie. It's crazy. Like I wouldn't even let my daughter read any of my books, but just recently I let her read it. And she's like, that's my favorite book. Oh my God, there's so much action. Every scene, there's something going on. It's really crazy hustle. Then I guess I'll talk about this one. This is called Wish You Pain. This is my latest book. This is about basically overcoming challenges and obstacles in your life and how to make pain your purpose. And this was written actually in my hospital bed. I recently had heart surgery. And while I was recovering, I wrote this book. This was kind of my latest, nearest and dearest. So this has some really good thematic elements to never give up. And then finally, this is called the Infinity Cup Heist. This took 6 years to make, and this is about the stealing of the Stanley Cup. In this case, I call it the Infinity Cup, and that's hockey's holy grail. It's the biggest prize in hockey, and it looks kind of like this.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, it's actually behind me. See that silver cup behind me that's lit in blue?
Yeah.
That's the Stanley Cup. So I made friends with the guy whose job it is to guard the Stanley Cup 350 days a year. And I also used to do security. So I knew when the Stanley Cup came to Los Angeles, all the different ways to steal that thing. And so I wrote it in a book and I made it fun, like a heist movie.
There's so many people who won't even write a book at home when they're well, but you wrote a book in a hospital bed after a heart surgery.
Wait, I got to tell you something about that. So here's the deal. I had some massive writer's block and I couldn't figure out how the book was going to go next. And then I had to go to the hospital for emergency for a blood infection. And then all the crap I went through dealing with the nurses and how scary it was. When I came home, actually like near the end of my stay at the hospital, I was starting to feel a little bit better. I started typing what had happened to me and it helped me write the story better because I had lived it. So I would really say I'm a method writer. Most of the time when I have writer's block, it's because I haven't lived out the pages yet. So I have to usually live out the pages to be able to write them with some sort of, expertise.
So we have a couple of questions from the audience today. Are you okay for answering those?
Yeah. Why not?
Perfect. Let me just grab it real quick. Okay, so our first one. Do you have a process for getting started? I mean, a lot of people want to write books, but how do you get started?
The key is preparation. I break down every single character in a book before I start writing the book. And then I break down the whole plot line, beginning, middle, and end. And then I also break down each of the story arcs of all the characters. So that may take quite a while to do, but it's very important because if you're organized in the pre-production phase of writing, just like in movie making, if you're organized in the pre-production, it saves you from having a runaway production that goes over budget. In this case, if I just write dialogue, it just meanders and it goes like this and this. And then I end up writing 30 pages that I end up never using. And one key tip that I would recommend to tell anyone who's getting started in writing a book is every page has got to count. Every scene has to actually forward the story. So I used to just have some in-between banter. No, in the beginning of the story, you establish the character and then you throw in a couple Easter eggs. All right. That's the stuff that you're going to use later. And that's like the aha moment when the audience, in the payoff part of the story, they're like, oh, that's why that guy's a violin player. It's not just because you're just showcasing it. It's because the murder weapon is hidden in the violin case, stuff like that. You have to kind of throw those little breadcrumbs in there for the audience. And that all happens with pre-production because there's no way you can just kind of keep the whole story, big picture figured out, writing it page by page.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine page by page. Sounds pretty hard. But that does sound like it breaks it down a little bit easier into bite-sized chunks. I think that's great. Our viewers would love that. That's great information. Thank you. Now, okay, so now that we know how to start a book, now let's say that we've ended a book. How do we market that book?
There's a lot of different ways. Like one of the first and most important ways to market a book is actually the book cover. So you want it to look like a movie poster. You want it to look really eye-catching. I say that the book cover actually has to be visible from 6 feet away or in a thumbnail view, because this is my favorite book cover because it's this way, but then the Spanish version of the book, it's this way. So there's a little bit of variant involved. And this is actually the special edition of the book. So that's another tip, is to create a first edition and then just add a couple things into the special edition so you can resell it again. So in this particular one, I added, some autograph and then like a note from the author right here that's not in the first book. So that helps me with that. Another really cool thing that I recommend is just finding new ways to promote the book other than just obviously the cover. So I took this design and I turned it into a skateboard.
Wow.
So what I love about this is that, like my daughter, she's a skateboarder, right? And skating has nothing to do with this story, but like you've got character number 1 And then once again, you can flip it and have character number 2. So when you're skateboarding, you can decide, am I going to skate, the dark side, so to speak, or the light side? You know what I mean? And so that's really fun, and also it's a great conversation starter, because when we're out there at the skate parks, my daughter, people see this and they're like, hey, what is that board? I've never seen that one in the stores. And she's like, oh, that's a book / it's a movie that I think you should take a look at. So that's another conversation starter. I'm going to show you one other one real quick. This is the Infinity Cup Heist. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, that's cool.
So what's cool, once again, is when I'm promoting, I have the book and the skateboard in all my social media. So
that's a great way to not only promote your book, but also to get some great eye-catching material into Instagram and YouTube and wherever else you post this, to be able to grab more attention, because most people are putting up books. That's a great way to do that. That's very
fun. And then I have t-shirts, so like an apparel line, like all this stuff. And it just, once again, is just a great way to kind of create, a little bit of conversation. And then like, oh, well, what is that shirt? What is that skateboard? This is a book that I wrote based off of XYZ. So I love it.
That's really cool. So when you're writing books on Amazon, I know that Amazon has places for review. One of the viewer questions we have is, how do you get book reviews?
Book reviews are hard because nobody wants to spend the time to write your book review. But the key is, for me, Amazon also doesn't let you know who bought your book. And that's kind of a little thing I don't like about Amazon, because I have no idea who bought it. So on social media, what I'll do is I'll take a picture of a couple people who have bought the book that I know in person, and then I'll take a selfie. They will take a selfie of them holding the book. It looks very similar to this. And they send it to me, and then I put it on all my social media saying, hey, I'd like to thank Angelique for buying my new book, Wish You Pain. Angelique is actually a motivational coach, and this book is about a motivational coach who gets in a car accident, and he then really realizes what pain's all about. Even though he hypes it up, he has no idea until the shit hits the fan. Anyway, so I put that in this little caption, and then once I know that you've bought the book, and once I have like a whole pipeline of what has to happen next. So you have to then submit me that selfie. Then I ask you like 2 weeks later for the book review. And then if you don't do anything, I ask you another week later. And then finally I ask you to put it on Amazon. If you're not willing to put it on Amazon, the book review, then I just have you type 2 sentences of what you thought. And I have customized graphics that I use to then put on social media showing, so-and-so liked it, you should buy it too. And I find that when people take those selfies with the books, that I sell more books. So on the back end of Amazon, you can see it's called the bookshelf, I think is what it's called. And you can kind of see, the reports. It's the reports. And you can see all the different days that you've sold more books. So every time I show those selfies and I have a book review, automatically it sells more books that same day when I post it, I've noticed.
That's a great tip. That's $1 million tip right there. That's what I'll tell you. If you want to sell a book, put it on Amazon and put those selfies up. That's a great way to market. So I just have one final question. I want to know, where can we buy your books and your merchandise?
So I don't think I have my merchandise for sale yet. Maybe I will down the road, and I don't have my skateboards for sale. They're all kind of like one-of-a-kind items. But yeah, definitely these books are all on Amazon. And the reason why I do that is so I can actually make money while I sleep. I have a whole thing here where if you want to buy a personalized copy of this book where I write something personalized to you, I do that. It costs a little bit more, and it's through my website. So each website has its own landing page that I make, and I use that to promote the story of that book. But then there's a section where you can buy the authored personalized copy, and then I just ship it out. So I've learned how to ship it from my home. I bought a little scale. I know how much each book weighs, and then I figured out the cheapest way to send it out. And one thing, hey, here's a little tip for your all your authors. Yep. The post office doesn't tell you this, but there's something called book rate. So if you're sending something like across the nation, normally it costs like $8 to $10 to ship. Yeah. But if you do book rate, it's like $2 to $3. So that doesn't maybe sound like that big of a deal, but like it adds up over time. So if you ship book rate, that's just a nice way to save some money.
Absolutely. That's great information. I've never heard that one before. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for sharing everything that you know about publishing a book from start to finish. And thank you for joining us live here on Grow Your Destiny. We had a great time and great information here today. If you want to learn more about Alex, find him on, what was your website again, Alex? I don't think we put it up. There we go.
SpyGameStudios.com. But this is actually my book publishing side of it. It doesn't really have the sales part. But if you go on there, you can kind of see the links to Amazon of all the other books. So if you just go to Amazon and if you type in my name, right here, this is the way to spell my name, you'll find all the books that I have. And it's just a fun journey. I was going to tell you one thing real quick. A lot of people are worried about selling books. And I got to tell you right now, although the money is great and being a published author and being able to make money, doing your dream job, I think it's really not about that at first. It's all about just being able to say you have a published book is so cool and so fun and so rewarding to open up a box and have all your stuff and be like, I wrote that. And what's really cool about it is if I were to die, this is the legacy. Like I actually, when I was going to major heart surgery, I don't have a lot of money. I'm not a rich guy, but I gave my kids these books and I was like, this is for you. Like, this is what I can offer you that will earn money later. Like if you make it into a movie or whatever, like this is for you. And so I encourage anyone, write your story. If you need help, get help. But, it's really important that you do it. Don't try to like pawn it off on someone else. Only you know your life story. Start with that. Start with stuff because you were there when those conversations happened. You were there when the shit hit the fan. Like that's something that I think is really important that people, are too lazy to even try. But it's very gratifying.
It sounds gratifying. I know I'm looking forward to writing my first book next year. So I'll be using motion. That's right. That's right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Alex. We had a great time. You had so much to give us and so much valuable information, $1 million ideas and $1 million lessons and tips that you provided us. So thank you for joining us today on Grow Your Destiny. And remember, you too can become a manifestation magnet. Keep that mindset positive and become and stay motivational throughout the entire day. You have a beautiful and blessed day, guys.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.